And as I say, we'll be using some of our shots as well for social media. So hopefully everybody's happy with that. So welcome everybody. Thank you to our afternoon slots for our National Careers Week sessions for our event that we're doing on the Friday of National Careers Week 2021. And what a week we've had already. So we're in day 5 of 6 days. And throughout the week, we've had a great level of engagement, particularly on social media, but we do know of various things that are going on in lots of schools, virtually, of course, across the UK in terms of promoting careers in housing and the opportunities, and not only schools, colleges and universities as well, and some great testimonials that we've been putting out throughout the week, some great strong messages and passionate words about why people have chosen a career in housing. So this session that we're just about to embark on this afternoon is entitled Creating Our Housing Profession Future. The main thrust of this particular session is about looking at younger housing professionals and how we can individually and collectively work together to make sure that we're raising the profile of housing as a career of choice amongst the wider public, but also amongst those younger generations as well. And I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by both James and Ailey. So first of all, I'll give a very brief introduction to both of them, and I'll let them introduce themselves more if they wish as we go into our session. So James is a project manager at Live West and is also the vice chair of CIH Futures and a very active member of CIH. Ailey McDonald is a graduate trainee at Kingdom Housing Association in Scotland, and has a great story to tell about her journey into housing and the things that she's experienced and had the opportunity to get involved in, including a placement at CIH Scotland. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hand you over to both James and Ailey to go through their session this afternoon. Please do, as with all of our sessions, make this as interactive as possible. Let's make, James and Ailey, we've got them here on the stage, so let's sort of ask them questions and let's share in discussions and so on. So James and Ailey, without further ado, I'm going to hand the stage over to you both. I'm not quite sure which one is going first, but I'm sure that you'll tell me what that is.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, I guess it's kind of up to us. I mean, do you want to go first? Do you want to get your presentation done and then we can talk about that?
Yeah, of course. So that sounds like it would make a lot of sense. So that's perfect. Hi everybody. As you probably worked out, I'm Ailey and I'm the graduate housing trainee at Kingdom. So I've only been in housing for 18 months after graduating from the University of Glasgow in History and Religious Studies. Before this, I was actually a tour guide, so I've definitely had a bit of a career change. So I just wanted to use this as an opportunity to talk a wee bit about how I've got here, and like Joe said, just go over what I've learned since starting in my traineeship and why I'd certainly recommend housing as a career of choice to anybody who might be thinking about joining the sector. So I guess the logical place to start would be why housing. As much as I did love my previous job, I knew that when I left university, I wanted to find a career where I could use my skills to make a more meaningful difference to people's lives. And while I want to avoid saying that I fell into housing, it was definitely a bit of a twist of fate that brought me here. I really hope I've been in my job long enough now to admit that I'd actually been accepted into teacher training prior to applying for it. However, I had quite a bit of a long hospital admission, which meant that I needed to defer my offer. And then it was within this year that I saw the advert for my current position at Kingdom. But I did have an awareness of the housing sector prior to applying. So during my degree, I studied public policy for a year, and these modules were really centred around housing and homelessness in Glasgow. So I already knew that it was something that I really had an interest in. And my mum and granddad had actually also both worked in the sector. My granddad was a maintenance officer and my mum worked for a co-housing trust. So I'd seen the difference that they'd been able to make to people's lives, and I knew that that's something that I'd want to be able to do myself. One of my favourite stories growing up was actually that my granddad had once visited a property to find a real monkey hanging from a living room ceiling, and then he had to work with Edinburgh Zoo to find it a new home. So it was stories like this and the awareness that I'd built up while I was at university that really particularly attracted me to my traineeship. I knew that it was going to present a great opportunity to contribute to my local community, and coming from Fife, there's not really many opportunities, well, graduate opportunities certainly, to do that. And the fact that Kingdom would also support me to complete a postgraduate diploma in housing studies was a real bonus. So I've applied and I've definitely not looked back. My traineeship is great because it's designed to provide me with an extensive knowledge of both Kingdom as an organisation, but also of the broader housing sector. So it kind of has like 3 prongs to it. So as I briefly mentioned just there, one of those is that I'm currently studying part-time towards a postgraduate qualification in housing from the University of Stirling. I'm only halfway through my 2nd module, but this has already been a great way to build my knowledge of housing policy and practice, and it really complements what I'm doing within my traineeship. And because I do the part-time option, it's designed to be flexible for those who are already working within the sector. But I did want to mention that there is also an opportunity to do the course full-time, and within that you do a 10-week internship, and that's designed for those who are looking to come into housing. And then I guess the second prong, if you will, is that I'm completing a number of different internal placements within Kingdom itself. So while I'm based in the housing department, I'm also being given the opportunity to work alongside teams such as development, HR, corporate governance. And so far I've completed 3 of these placements. So I just wanted to give a wee bit of an explanation into what each of the roles that I've done have entailed. And I think it really helps to highlight how varied a career in housing can be. So firstly, I was placed within our customer contact team, and this really helped me to develop kind of key practical skills while building my confidence when interacting with tenants and customers. So in the contact team, you can deal with everything and anything, from logging repairs and reports of antisocial behaviour, to providing housing advice, assessing housing applications, and dealing with tenancy permission requests. And some of this can be really difficult, especially when you're dealing with sensitive matters, but it's equally rewarding, and it's safe to say that no day will ever be the same. And then I moved on to Kingdom's alternative tenure team. So this is the team responsible for mid-market rent properties and our factoring services. So it felt like a natural progression from the customer contact team. And it was here that I was given the opportunity to essentially fulfil the role of a housing assistant. So this meant getting involved in the housing allocation and tenancy support processes a wee bit more. And I was actually able to go out and visit tenants in their homes, and this allowed me to see firsthand the positive impact that Kingdom was having on their lives. And this is definitely something that has continued to kind of act as a motivating factor as I'm progressing through my traineeship. And then finally, I've now been working alongside our Tenant Participation Officer for just about a year now. So Tenant Participation is all about empowering and assisting tenants to get involved in opportunities to influence decision making and the delivery of services within their organisation. So as a Tenant Participation Officer, you have to ensure that tenants and customers are properly consulted about the work and performance of their landlord. And this is so they can scrutinise it and hold the organisation accountable. And it's a statutory requirement in Scotland, so it's really important that this is done properly. And my role has really been to help make sure that we can continue tenant participation activities online, thanks to social distancing and see who shall not be named. And this has allowed me to get involved with helping digitally excluded tenants get online, hosting virtual events, and developing new platforms for tenants and customers to engage with us on. I've also been working on projects surrounding participatory budgeting, which allows tenants and customers to access funds to drive forward ideas that they have to improve their own local communities. And I've been trying to get an increased number of younger residents involved in our activities as well. But that's very much a kind of executive summary of the opportunities I've been given internally. But like Jill said at the beginning, I've also been working with partner organisations to complete external work placements as well. So one of those was with CIH Scotland, and here I was evaluating their membership offer and how it related to under 30s within the housing sector. And I also, before this, got to complete a research assistant placement with the University of Stirling. And this led me to be part of a larger project that was looking at COVID-19 and how it was impacting the delivery of housing services across Scotland. And I've also just begun a placement with Scotland's Housing Network, where I'll be helping to produce a resource designed to help landlords who would like to branch into offering mid-market rent homes. So completing these external placements has been a great way for me to build my knowledge and wider professional skills that I can then integrate back into the work I'm doing within Kingdom. So, for example, in addressing digital exclusion, and then I've been able to get involved with the rollout of key digital inclusion projects within Kingdom. And I know that I've been really lucky to have such a supportive employer who invests so heavily in employees' personal and professional development. But what I'm really trying to highlight is that a career in housing can be as varied as you want it to be. In the space of an hour, I can go from writing a domestic abuse policy to hosting a tenant coffee morning where there'll be a quiz featuring my cats. But what I've mentioned only highlights a tiny fraction of the roles available. There are also housing officers, trade operatives, health and safety officers, finance positions, tenancy sustainment services, support workers, policy researchers. The list is genuinely endless. And I'm sure that you've probably heard about those at some of the earlier events today. But there really are just so many different ways to get involved, and it's definitely not something that I was made aware of prior to coming into housing. And there are a lot of different entry routes into these as well. And I've certainly learnt that housing organisations lie at the heart of local communities. And if you're like me and driven by a want to help people, then a job within housing will give you the tools to do this. After all, every single person has the right to a safe place called home, and I'm so grateful that my job allows me to help work towards a vision for a fairer and more equal society. And on a more personal level, with all this varieties, there are lots of ways to progress, take a sidestep in your career, and you'll certainly never be bored. As well as delivering frontline services, I find that you're given opportunities to draw upon your kind of analytical skills as well, and are encouraged to think strategically, which is something that I didn't think I would enjoy as much as I do. And also, at the end of the day, people are always going to need a home. And in a world where there is a lot of kind of economic uncertainty, a career in housing does offer a level of job security that other roles may not have. So if you are considering coming into the sector, I would genuinely encourage you to do it because you have absolutely nothing to lose. But I'm aware I've been speaking at you for a bit now, so I'll pass back over to James.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's really good. I think it's such a the opportunity you've had at Kingdom and through your course at your postgraduate at Stirling as well is massive. I think it's such a great example of how we can bring people into the sector in a way that's really beneficial for the individual. So for you, you're learning so much from this. It's such a rich kind of experience for you, but also for your organisation as well. You know, Kingdom will be seeing so much internal improvement opportunity from how actually you've got trainees moving around the business, sharing how things are working in different areas, bringing fresh perspectives, new ideas, and building a really kind of well-rounded view of an organisation. Is such a good example.
Yeah, no, definitely. I hope that I'm able to do that when I've been going round. And it's certainly something that I've noticed if you're going into a different department, kind of almost following the processes kind of up the chain, and maybe makes you aware of things that you wouldn't otherwise be. Because, for example, if I was in the contact team and I was starting with, say, logging an antisocial behaviour request, and then when I went to the alternative tenure team, I'm following that up and seeing then how those requests are dealt with. So kind of you're able to kind of identify improvements, and like I was saying, like think strategically. So I hope that it is allowing me to contribute kind of more meaningfully than I might otherwise have been able to.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. That's really good. What I wanted to kind of add to what he's already said for everyone today on the session is just kind of give a really brief overview of my own career history, because it's very different to that experience, but there probably are a lot of parallels to that too. It's talk a little bit about CIH Future and what we're here to do, but also what we're focusing on doing in the coming year from now, and talk a bit about the opportunity within the sector for how we can do things a little bit differently to bring some people in. I think it'd be really good. So as Jill said at the start, my name's James. I'm a project manager at the moment for Live West. We're a social housing provider based in the southwest of England. We cover from Gloucester right down to the tip of Cornwall. We have about 36,500 homes and plenty of customers and tenants that come with that. I started in the organisation about 7 years ago as a customer services team manager, having come from a background of retail management, and decided that I'd had enough of that. I wanted to work in an occupation that actually made a difference to people, very similar to really what you were saying about your want to come into the sector, and had the opportunity to apply and was successful. So for me, I'm someone who would pull out the phrase we all hate to say if I fell into housing. But what I would say is that actually it was still driven from a purpose perspective. So I was tired of working in a really kind of like commercial sector that was just chasing profit all the time, squeezing the people within that to kind of make the numbers work in their favour and deliver more cash to investors essentially, and work for something that made a bigger difference in my community. And I could have some impact on where I live as well, because I live in the area that we cover. I think it's really important that you can have that interaction, that kind of impact in your community. My career path from there went through a couple of restructures, because I think housing has changed so much over the last few years, certainly last 5, as to how we're operating. That's because of modernisation, largely, I would say. But with that all the time is huge amounts of opportunity as we change the way we work and we expand. Most organisations are growing or merging with other organisations, which means in the sector there's always ample opportunity, and often more opportunity for things like personal development as well. From that customer services role, went into a business improvement role as a change agent, which is a job title that means very little to a lot of people, but was around how it was my responsibility to work with our operational teams to understand where we could be driving better value for customers in terms of their rent affordability, but also around actually efficiencies within the business to deliver more to our customers. And then I would run improvement projects to deliver that. My role now is actually at a more strategic level, where I work as part of our core project management office, delivering strategic projects across our whole programme of works for Live West. So my current project portfolio looks at the response to the housing white paper and how we deliver change that we need to make as an organisation from that within the business, to things like project managing the development of our new data management platform, where we're able to bring different data sources in from across the business into one area and then report on that much more organically than what we have been able to do in the past. So within my relatively short career in housing so far, I've already spanned a number of roles, and from starting in customer services and then moving through into a more back office support function, I've actually seen a lot of the business. And that's something I think that either you touched on, that we don't sell enough in the housing sector, is that actually at Live West, we've got a colleague population of about 1,400 people. So there's lots of people working for Live West, one of the largest employers in the Southwest, but actually that's over 400 roles, different roles across our organisation, and that's absolutely massive. There are very few businesses where actually you can have such a span of roles working for an organisation, and with real different levels of kind of responsibility. The jobs can be incredibly varying. So like you're saying, we've got, if you think about how organisations, housing associations are really focused on their development pipelines at the moment, you've got people working on securing sites for development, delivering that all the way through to handing it into management, and then the ongoing management of that site from a tenancy perspective and from a property perspective, from a maintenance perspective. But you've got the people managing the finance of that in the background. We've got huge IT teams working hard to, especially in the current conditions, to make sure that people are able to do their job, that we've got technology to succeed in what we want to do, and that we've got an improvement and a transformation agenda that allows us to continue to kind of evolve and grow as an organisation and deliver more all the time. Right the way through to people who are out on the ground delivering support services, young persons services, services for older customers, for older residents. It's huge, absolutely massive. I think it's something we could really look at doing differently, I suppose, as a sector, is how we highlight that variation of roles. My role as the Vice Chair of CIH Futures is a voluntary position, working as part of the support structure within the CIH, I suppose. It's a kind of scrutiny-led position, was how it was originally set up as an advisory board. What we do now is we kind of team that scrutiny of how the CIH operate for young members with directly driving value into the membership for young members as well. So we work to provide as much opportunity as we can for people to get involved, additional layers of kind of feature for membership, whether that's competitions or writing opportunities, blogging and vlogging opportunities, speaking opportunities and stuff like that. But also about where we're really focused on ensuring that the CIH has a route for capturing what young people in housing are looking for in their careers, because that means that we can use that and then work as a sector to target that information back to people coming into the housing sector. So one of our key aims as a board, as a group, is to make sure that the housing sector has a viable future. And that's around ensuring that people are coming into the sector, that the talent turnover is good, there's lots of opportunity within the sector for people to learn and grow, and that when people find and they discover housing as a sector they can work in, that they understand the breadth of it, that they see there's real value and purpose in working in the sector, and therefore they want to stay. Because not only does that mean that we have hopefully more CIH members in the sector, which is always a good thing, but it also means that there's more of us, more hands working to achieve what we want to achieve, which is kind of end the housing crisis, directly impacts homelessness. And actually, you know, we hear a lot in government at the moment about this level up agenda that we hear. Well, a lot of us, we've kind of been working on levelling up areas by driving that value directly from the people who live in those areas. And as Elise already mentioned, there's a big focus at the moment on tenant participation and how we can kind of use the people who live in the neighbourhoods that we deliver services in to help us design and build the next kind of chapter for that neighbourhood. That's really important. It's something that I know we're really kind of focused on. So within that, I think it's a really good opportunity for us. This week's been really great to kind of showcase careers in housing and to celebrate that. But there's lots of work we can be doing all the time throughout the year to kind of celebrate housing careers. And there's a real kind of view on a few different things we can do and how that splits out from organisations like the CIH doing that, but also for housing associations and providers of the careers in housing, local authorities, charity sector to do that themselves. So one of the key focuses that we've got this year, the CIH Futures, and as we're now at the point of the year where we're actually writing our strategy for the next 12 months, is to look at how we access people who are not in the sector. So there are times when actually as a sector we can be really good at collaborating together. We have fantastic events in the sector, there's loads of stuff going on for you to learn and to develop all the time, but what can we do to actually reach out to people who aren't in the sector yet? And one of the best solid examples of the way that we're doing that is something that launched this week. I know Joe probably would have been mentioned already today, but we have a National Housing Challenge competition. This launched again this year. It launched on Wednesday. It's the second year of running it, and the Housing Challenge is an essay writing competition. It's targeted at people from the ages of 18 to 25. And there's 5 questions that we want them to look at and answer in this essay competition. 1, why should housing be the government's top priority? 2, how does affordable and good quality housing and neighbourhoods impact individuals' overall health outcome? Really important in the current climate we all find ourselves in. 3, what do you think the financial and economic implications are for the housing sector as a result of COVID-19? Or C, who should not be named, as Elise described it as earlier. And then you named it.
I know.
See, caught yourself out.
Error.
4, what can the housing sector do to tackle climate change? And 5, what should the housing sector do to support young people in their careers? So we've got 5 questions there for people to choose them to write an essay and to deliver that back. It's like I said, it's a competition. The entry runs until the 14th of April, and the top prize for the Housing Challenge is a summer paid internship with Homes England. Homes England is the government funding body for housing in England. So it's a really fantastic prize. It's a great insight into the sector. It's a great chance to get some really practical experience in the sector. And the runners-up, the 10 runners-up will also get CIH membership, along with some other opportunities as well with that. Now, that's going to be impactful for 10 people who win, massively impactful. It's going to be impactful for maybe the 50 people who enter into that competition. What we want to do this year is really focus on how we can take ideas like that and expand that to attract more people and to reach more people. And the key thing, I think, for the Housing Challenge is not only is it having a great reward at the end of it, which is fantastic, but the questions we've worked on this year, and Alicia in our team is the one who's really led on this and delivered that, are focused on purpose and personal impact. So we know that as we look at the generation who are coming into the employment space, so we're talking about Generation Z, Gen Z, as they move through into employment now, these are people who are more focused than ever on purpose, on delivering to tackle big problems, working together to tackle big problems, and are less bothered about things like salary and shiny car schemes and stuff like that. That's not to say that stuff isn't important, because people need to earn. And one thing I would say is that there's been a real focus this week outside of the housing sector in National Careers Week as well, for recruiters in particular, about actually, if you've got a job description going out and you've got a job advert going out, make sure that salary is on that job advert. That's something really simple that makes a big difference to a lot of people and could be the the difference between someone applying and something we strongly believe in as well. But as an aside, that purpose piece is going to be really key. We know that young people joining the sector who are coming through those levels of education now are more focused on things like climate change than ever before. They see the presenting issues. We see through the hard work that's happened before now that there's an opportunity to make society more fair. And that actually a lot of the organisations that are growing in the sector, housing associations and other providers, have got a really big part to play in that. And showcasing as a provider, or showcasing in whatever your kind of capacity is for growing careers in the sector, what the opportunity is to tackle those big, meaningful problems, is going to be really important to how we really gather that attention and then show how you can directly make an impact. And that's not necessarily just around targeting existing housing courses either. So we're really lucky at the moment for the CIH that we have a really fantastic president, Aileen, who's done a lot of campaigning around mental health in her kind of presidential year and a bit that she's had. And she's been a fantastic supporter of us. But we've actually got Jo Richardson coming along as the vice president currently, who will take over the presidency this year, who is a housing lecturer herself, works at, I think, at Loughborough University. Jo, correct me if I'm wrong about that. Or
De Montfort.
De Montfort, there we go. Yeah. As a housing lecturer, someone who has direct access into the higher education circles. And we'll be working with Jo to look at how we can really benefit from that, because there are so many roles in housing, like I've touched on, like Evie's already touched on, but there's so many different roles or avenues for careers in the education sectors that don't directly point at housing. And where we need to look at how we can really showcase what is available for us in the sector in terms of jobs and roles, and how actually those non-traditional routes might be a way to enter into it. Because we will always value people who, like myself, have fallen into housing. That's fantastic. Anytime someone chooses a career in housing, whether it was like a long-term education journey, or whether it was because they saw an advert and fancied a change of pace, that's going to be beneficial for us, isn't it? Because we just want people working in the sector. But the more we can do to really generate interest at that front end of careers to move people into the sector, the better, I think. So that's going to be a big focus for us this year. Like I said, we're going to focus on the purpose piece. We're going to work with some student groups to try and understand what they want and what they need to help them understand more about the sector. And we're going to work with the CIH in terms of how we can drive more member value for student members, and look at how they can access content more widely available. And one of the big benefits of our current way of working after the obviously horrendous impact of the current pandemic is that things are more accessible than ever. This session today is more accessible because it's hosted over Teams, isn't it? If you think if we were meeting somewhere in London for this session, it would be much more restrictive in terms of who could attend. And we know that the young people who are looking to find out more information about their careers, travel and the cost of travel is a real problem at times. University open days are hard to get to. It's hard for us as a sector body to try and get into those university open days because we can't be at 16 different universities at once. And I think the fact that we are able to do these things now digitally is a real kind of bonus to that. But that's also to say that there's a big role for housing associations and providers to play in that too. So I'm really fortunate that I live west. We've got a really engaged recruitment team who organise for us to go and speak to local institutions of education. So I've spoken to a couple of colleges in Exeter. I've got a session planned in a few months' time for my own personal previous education, sixth form, to talk about housing as a career an opportunity for careers. We've had people from our renewable technologies manager who works in our internal maintenance service go and talk to students at another local college in Cornwall about how there are lots of opportunities coming up in renewable technologies. And we've got people working with University of Bristol and UE to look at opportunities around development and stuff like that, tapping into courses where it might be more about planning, but actually taking that from being maybe a consultancy type role in future to working for a housing provider as a dedicated member of their development team. So there's lots that organisations can do themselves to sit amongst that. So let me just check. I think I've covered everything that I wanted to cover in that session. But I feel like I've done a lot of broadcasting. I wonder whether we want to kind of open up for questions and see what people think.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Thank you. So thank you both for your presentations. Really, really insightful in so many different aspects. And, thank you both for sharing your journeys and sharing details about the opportunities that you've been able to get involved in and sort of touching upon those much bigger issues and implications of various things. So I personally have got so many takeaways from it, but what I want to do can I just open it up and see if anybody wants to sort of pose questions and observations? So Joseph, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Hayley and James, for your talks. As someone who's only been in housing for 6 weeks, it's good to see how people can progress. I'd say my journey so far is a bit more like Hayley's, sort of falling into housing after seeing a single job advert on my university careers page. But it's been a fantastic start so far, and I'm looking forward to see where it's going. Just on all the opportunities you said you've had, Hayley, are they things that you went out and sought, or are they things that maybe your line manager or the business wanted to introduce you to? My initial contract is a 12-month one. I'm currently studying the level 4 CIH qualification as well. But it's just sort of a conversation I've had with my line manager and head of department is where I'd like to be in 12 months. Like what can be my next role, what can be my next responsibilities. So yeah, it's just to see sort of how much you went out to chase things or how supportive people were to you.
Thanks, Joseph. No, so I've been really, really lucky. My line manager is super supportive. So this is the first time that they've done the traineeship. So the way that it's structured was so that I would kind of get those opportunities coming into it. Something that I was able to do as well is I was able to ask if I wanted to shadow other job roles and things as well. So even just spend a few days with somebody going out to see them. I was able to kind of push that myself, but no, most of it has been structured for me by my line manager, who is extremely supportive. And there is a kind of culture of personal and learning development being pushed within the organisation. So kind of that feeds into it, and that's where the traineeship kind of evolved from. So that's what I would say for that. And then again, it's my line manager that's been he works with the partner organisations to set up the placements, and usually it'll come with a kind of project proposal. And there is Grant, who's my counterpart in development, so he's the development trainee. We do the same external placements, but we'll get to decide between us maybe which project we'll do. And there can be sometimes a bit more free rein in those. So when I was working as the kind of research assistant opportunity with University of Stirling, I was able to choose what topic I'd like to research. So that was kind of guided by myself. But yeah, to cut a long story short, most of it is put in place by my manager.
Nice, good stuff. Yeah, I think it's quite similar for me so far. They've been very active in introducing me to people, and then I've mentioned myself about shadowing people when I have the opportunity. So yeah, I think it's something that I've found with the housing sector, and that everyone's really supportive, and
100%.
I feel that compared to other places I've worked previously, departments collaborate more. I feel like there's more things which bring departments together within housing than within the industries I've worked in previously.
Definitely, no, I'd completely agree with that, and I think everyone within the organisation is really supportive. And I know that when I've spoke to maybe some of my other friends and that who've been doing traineeships in kind of other sectors, it can almost feel like it's a burden to have a trainee following you or learning from you, whereas I found everybody's always so keen to get you involved in things and will offer you these opportunities because they want you to be able to have them, which I think is brilliant, and I feel really lucky and grateful to have those.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Jill, just before we move on, whereabouts are you based, Joseph?
So I work for Onward Homes, so we're based in the northwest of England. We cover Lancashire, Greater Manchester, Merseyside, and Cheshire.
Perfect. So what I wondered, Jill, as well, would it be good for set up an opportunity for Joseph to sit in on his next regional CIH session?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can arrange that. So what we can do is give the opportunity for members to observe, the forthcoming regional group meetings. And Joseph, that will give you an opportunity to sort of hear more about the things that are being discussed within those active membership groups, and sort of understand some of the pieces of work that are being worked upon. And one of the things to mention is that the structure that we work within our regional groups now is a lot more flexible, so it does allow members to get more engaged with activities, as opposed to saying, the main way for you to get engaged is to be part of a regional group and you must attend a board meeting, every couple of months. There's lots of different ways that our members are able to get more engaged, and as part of that, so if I give you an example, that during National Careers Week, a number of our members have taken the opportunity to write blogs for us about their career and their career path and why they're passionate about their sector, or their top tips. And what that helps us to do is collectively raise the profile of those opportunities in housing. But in a lot of instances as well, it also means that a member is given the opportunity to do something that might be out of their normal day-to-day comfort zone in terms of the areas of work that they're getting involved in. So if somebody doesn't regularly write blogs or articles or things like that on a regular basis, that gives an opportunity then to sort of create that ability to do it, and also links in with what James has said as well about CIH and CIH Futures providing that platform to help to springboard members and raise their profile, which has been that shift in the sort of strategy and direction of CIH Futures since it's since it started originally. So yeah, absolutely. So we'll take I've got your details here, so we'll make sure that you're kept in the loop for that.
Great, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. I'm mindful of time before we go into our sort of virtual break, but I just want to, if you can just touch upon a couple of things. Is there another question?
There is, yeah.
Right.
I'll try and make it quick, Jill, if that's okay.
Carry on. Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Brilliant. James, Ellie, first off, fantastic presentation, really informative, very insightful. And as someone who joined as a graduate at the Housing Association 18 months ago, I literally, it was like you were talking about my own life there. So I really enjoyed the presentation. I guess the question I have to both of you is, what has been the main challenge you faced as being a relatively young, inexperienced person, joining a housing association?
Shall I go first? It's further back for me to remember, I suppose. I think for me, the main challenge I think I've faced in terms of career-wise as a young person working in housing is how to narrow down what I want to do. And from starting in an area of customer service where I had a real scope of the whole organisation, that was great in many ways. I saw so much of the business and learned so much so very quickly, but also meant that I had so many different avenues for how I could follow that. But what I would caveat that is from experience now, where I am compared to 7 years ago, is that actually don't define your path maybe too much at the start, and just kind of roll with the punches a little bit, really, because I took opportunities as they arise, and then I've kind of shaped my path from there. And from someone who's started in operations and now moved to a back office support and a strategic role, I'm now looking at my next step in maybe a year or two time to go back into operations again. So having some variation and creating that kind of really mixed skill set in my career has complemented everything I've done so far, and I can't see that kind of stopping in future. So just kind of, that would be the barrier, was trying to tie it down. The second thing is then trying to learn from that.
Yeah, and then I guess kind of building just upon what James has said, I think my barrier has almost been myself. It's building the confidence. I think because housing, I didn't know much about it at all coming into it. I had a bit of a background, but having not been aware of it, you're not just coming into a role that you know what's expected of you. It's kind of like you need to learn how it works, and then have confidence in yourself to make suggestions and put yourself forward for things. And something I think I found really helpful in doing that has been able to attend, and I guess this has been kind of an advantage of the pandemic, has been able to attend so many webinars on such a wide range of topics, and reading up on policy and doing the university course at the same time as working has really helped me with that, just so that I can have the confidence to kind of contribute my ideas and not keep second guessing myself. So I think that probably has been my biggest barrier so far.
That's really good reflection, because I think that is something to really focus on, is the sector is really changing in terms of how it's so ready to listen to lots of different perspectives, and that there is probably less of a seniority-led perspective now in the sector. So you don't have to be a senior leader with a 30-year career in housing to have your opinion heard at the table. And I think that's something that you should be really aware of as your career grows in the sector, is actually you're employed for a reason. You have your seat in your role. Share your experience. If your organisation is a great organisation, you've got great people around you, they will want to hear what you have to say. So say it.
Yeah, definitely.
Area.
Awesome. Thank you both.
Yeah. Absolutely brilliant question, Nabil. Thank you very much for that, and thank you for the responses from you both to that. So much of we could go on forever. It's so engaging. So much of what you touched upon, both of you, in this session here links so nicely to the session that we're going to be hosting shortly with Lee Hampton and myself, and that will be sort of for us to start to, we'll be sharing, Lee's going to be talking about her career and her career path, and quite a unique role is all that I'm going to say, really, Lee, in terms of sort of the role that you're in at the moment, but also from the fact that you are a careers advisor, and it'll give us the opportunity to talk about some of the great work that you've been doing with those younger generations. And when I say younger generations, I do mean younger generations. With Lee, we're talking about sort of, a wide range of audience and groups that she talks to, but that includes primary school children as well. So it'll be a really great opportunity. What I'd like to do is take some of the things that you've both talked about in this session over to that next session that we have, because I think there's some really valuable messages in there. Some of those things, just sort of off the top of my head, James, sort of talking about, we need to make sure that we've got a viable future, and that that's why it's so important for us to ensure that we continue to promote housing as a career of choice. at a wide range of audiences, but at those younger generations as well. And individually, I've said this sort of earlier, but individually and collectively we can do that. So thinking about some of the things that you talked about, James, when you relayed what Live West do in terms of talking at universities and getting out there and talking in the community about the job opportunities in the housing sector. We do know that goes on, an awful lot within our profession. And Joseph, you talked about, how supportive our profession is, and I think that's absolutely spot on. And that those are all key messages that in terms of driving forward, promoting it as a career of choice, are really, really strong. So in this next session, as well as the things that we're going to be sort of talking to Lee about, let's also sort of think about what we can do ourselves to sort of help drive that. And I think we all need to take ownership of it. We all have a role to play in it. So it'll be really interesting taking forward those discussions with you all into that next session. So without further ado, please again, just use the chat to sort of put any comments and observations in there. And we are then due back. Lee, can you help me with time?
2:35.
Thank you. So feel free to network, turn your cameras off or on, whatever you prefer. Go and get yourself a drink and a comfort break, and then we'll be back for that last session. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Joe.
See you
Thank
shortly.
you.
Bye.
Bye.